Aloha, welcome to A Course in Miracles. This is the workbook for students. We're on lesson 74. There is no will but God's. The idea for today can be regarded as the central thought toward which all of our exercises are directed. This is it, you guys. This is the central thought. There is no will but God's. There's no alien will. There's no other will. There's no will but God's. This is the central thought of A Course in Miracles. God's is the only will. When you've recognized this, you've recognized that your will is His. The belief that conflict is possible has gone. Peace has replaced the strange idea that you are torn by conflicting goals. As the expression of the will of God, you have no goal but His. So, what is this saying? There is no will but God's. And why is this regarded as the central thought in the Course? Because there's two thought systems. There's the thought system of the ego, which says that we are separate from God, that we have attacked God, and God is our enemy, and we have our own will that's in opposition to God's will. That's what the ego says. That's what this whole world is trying to demonstrate to us, that we are not one with God, but we've lost that oneness. What the Bible calls the fall has happened. And we live in a world of sin, guilt, and punishment. So that's the ego's thought system, that there's two wills, your will and God's will, and they're in constant conflict with each other. But what Jesus in the Course is telling us, that simply is not true. He's explaining what the Course calls the atonement principle, which is that the separation that the ego says happened never, ever happened. That we are still, as God created us, innocent, holy, and our will is still God's will. That there's only one will, and that it's a silly, what the Course calls a silly, mad idea that there could be another will besides God. I mean, to the Course's thinking, that's just ludicrous, that there could be such a thing. How could there be another will? If God is all-powerful, how could there be an opposite will to God? And so anything that supports the idea that there is another will is simply not true. And it's an illusion. It's a part of the world, the dream of the world of opposites, the dream of an alien will that we're having. And so that's the central message of A Course in Miracles, is that there is no will but God's. The whole idea that we have a separate will is impossible. It's just an illusion. It's just a lie of the ego. So that's kind of what this in my understanding of it, that's what this lesson and the course is really all about. And if you think about it, we really believe that lie really strongly because everything supports it. The whole world that's been created, the bodies and conflict that's stemming from the idea of, that this sin has happened and now we're all sinners and we're guilty and we deserve the wrath of God, and all this, that's even taught in the Bible. That's why the Bible is such a popular book, because it falls right in with this thought system of the ego. That, you're a sinner. You were born into sin. You fell when Adam fell, and you were cast out of the garden. All of this is a lie, Adam was never cast out of the garden. He left in his own mind into this dream, this sleep. The Course says that, when he went to sleep, in the book of Genesis, it never says that Adam woke up. Everything after that is still in the dream. We're still in the dream, and dreams can seem very real. And the more we believe in them, the more we give power to them. So this whole course is developed to help us see that what we believe so strongly in, that the ego is convinced this is true, is simply not true. And these exercises are designed to train our mind to where we can actually look within ourselves and see the light of truth. And that's where the light of truth is, that we have projected outside of ourselves this world of guilt and this world of duality, good, bad, right, wrong, pretty, ugly, the whole thing, God, the devil. But the truth isn't out there, because that's an illusion, a trick. That once we see, this is a trick, we can't be fooled by it anymore. But first we have to see what this illusion really is and pass through it. These dark clouds that are the symbol for the illusion or the veil that keeps us from seeing the truth. We have to pass through that cloud with Jesus, and that's what these lessons I've been talking about. And then we'll see and really experience and have knowledge of who we are and who God is, or we'll remember ourselves, we'll remember God. And when we do that, we'll know the truth, and we'll see that the silly, mad, crazy idea of separation is impossible, and that there is only God, and there is only God's will, and our will is God's will. So this is kind of like what this is saying. The belief that conflict is possible has gone. Peace has replaced the strange idea that you are torn by conflicting goals. As an expression of the will of God, you have no goal but His. That's what we are. We are an expression of the will of God, our true self. There is a great peace in today's idea, a great peace. And the exercises for today are directed towards finding it. The idea itself is wholly true. There is no will but God's. Therefore, it cannot give rise to illusions. Without illusions, conflict is impossible. Let us try to recognize this today and experience the peace that this recognition brings. So let us try to recognize today that there is no will possible but God's will. That we don't have a separate. We can't possibly. You might be thinking, oh yeah, Micah, but you don't know, man. My will is nothing like God's will. Well, that's the thing. What you're talking about is not your true self. You're talking about the false self, the ego that we've identified with, which is like a shadow. A shadow seems to be real, but it has no substance, and the light dispels it just like that. So this alien will is like a shadow. It doesn't really exist, not when the light comes on anyway. So that's what we're trying to recognize today. If we can just get this is the heart of the course, that there is only one will, and that's God's will. And God's will is our will. And we are the will of God. So begin the longer practice periods by repeating these thoughts several times slowly and with firm determination to understand what they mean and to hold them in our mind. There is no will but God's. Therefore, I cannot be in conflict. In other words, this seeming conflict is not really possible. It's not really true. It's an illusion because there is no will but God's will. Then spend several minutes in adding some related thoughts, such as, I am at peace. Nothing can disturb me. My will is God's. My will and God's are one. God's will peace. God wills peace for his sons. And I just want to say, these are not like affirmations where you're trying to make something true. Like, there is this idea that, whatever you can convince yourself through affirmations to believe, that you can make it real for yourself. If you say, I am rich, or I am whatever, and you say these affirmations over and over till you believe them. But that's not what we're doing here. We're actually saying the truth. We're not covering up or suppressing the thought system of the ego, but we're actually looking at it and seeing it for what it is, which is false. And then we're affirming. We're saying this not to make us believe something different than what we do, but we're saying it because it is the truth. It is the truth. There is no will but God's. God wills peace for his Son. So during this introductory phase, be sure to deal quickly with any conflict thoughts that may cross your mind. Tell yourself immediately, there is no will but God's. These conflict thoughts are meaningless. So, we're going to have conflicting thoughts. The ego is going to have thoughts like, well, what about this? And what about that? And, this definitely shows that there's another will, and on and on and on. But these thoughts are meaningless. Why are they meaningless? Because they're just not true. They're just totally made up. We believe them, but they're still meaningless. They have no meaning because they're not the thoughts of God, and only the thoughts of God are true. But God's thoughts and our thoughts are one. If we can just get to that place where we know our real self. And that's where we're headed, you guys. If there is one conflict area that seems to be particularly difficult to resolve, and it'll probably come to your mind, I can think of areas of conflict that are particularly difficult or seemingly difficult, and I bet you can too. We'll single these out for special consideration. Think about it briefly. Don't dwell on it, but very specifically. Identify the particular person or persons and the situation or situations involved. And tell yourself, there is no will but God's. I share it with them. And therefore my conflicts about so-and-so cannot be real. They cannot be real because there's only one will. After you've cleared your mind in this way, so we're going to clear our mind, we're going to use those beginning thoughts and techniques to clear our mind, then we're going to close our eyes and we're going to try to experience the peace to which our reality as a Son of God entitles us. We're going to sink into it. We're going to feel this peace closing around us. And there may be some temptation to mistake these attempts or withdraw. But the difference in withdrawal and peace is easily detected, especially once you've done this a little bit, If you're succeeding, you'll feel a deep sense of joy and an increased alertness. You won't be like, falling asleep. Rather than feeling of drowsiness and innervation. Like, oh God, my strength is going. So if we're like withdrawing, that's what you're going to feel. But if you do this correctly, you're going to feel joy and enlivened by it, these exercises. And that's one of the things that keeps you doing them, keeps you coming back. Joy characterizes peace. By this experience will you recognize the joy. You'll recognize that you've reached it. If you feel yourself slipping off into withdrawal, quickly repeat the idea for today. There is no will but God's. And try again. Do this as often as necessary. There is a definite gain in refusing to allow retreat into withdrawal, even if you do not experience the peace you seek. Even if you don't get there today, that's okay. You're definitely gaining. Every time you do these exercises, you are making progress. Definitely. Every minute the Course says in places is like years of progress. So, in the shorter practice periods, which should be undertaken at regular and predetermined intervals today, say to yourself, there is no will but God's, and I'm seeking His peace today. So just, determine today, okay, I'm going to get it in your mind what the intervals are going to be and when you're going to do them. Kind of plan them. It's up to you. Set them. And then just whenever that time comes, maybe your watch goes off every 30 minutes, hour, whatever, just say to yourself, there is no will but God's, and I seek His peace today. We're just keeping this idea before our mind. Then try to find what you are seeking. A minute or two every half hour with your eyes closed if possible will be well spent on this today. So here we are. This is it. The idea for today can be regarded as the central thought to which all these exercises that we've done are directed. That there is no will but God's. And anything that seems to the contrary is not true. It's just false. So all of our conflicts can be over if we can get to the place where we realize this truth that the Course is teaching us. There is no will but God's will. So, Godspeed to you today, and bless you. Have an awesome day. Mahalo, that means thank you in Hawaiian. And I will see you everywhere, and I will see you tomorrow.